from first-hand experience. Got a membership, went once in 3 weeks, but I digress. So let's go ahead and hop into our second series of this group. In the bottom right side, we're looking at the main base of the runner-up of the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice 2022. This is KZ Gaming's Reynor.
And up here in the top left-hand side of the map, the blue Protoss player, who I believe in his signature series has been seen squatting, so does go to the gym. It is Astrea from Alpha X.
You've made me a very curious boy right now. What kind of memes can I expect from your North American buddy?
So I did not ask for the proper details of things, but he did say there were very map-specific memes, so there's a chance that we may or may not see it coming out in like the first or second game or something. We'll see if things end up going, but so far we already have a good meme starting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a meme. The funny thing is that some people love Nexus first. I'm one of them. So for a lot of people, this is actually the most standard opening you could possibly go for. But at a pro level, this is not all that common. People are supposed to go Gateway into a fast expand and not Nexus first. And I do gotta say, it seems that Astrea likes to live a little dangerous because he's not just going Nexus first. Like, that's one thing. But going Nexus first, no scout? I mean, this man loves living on the edge, apparently.
I think it's one of Astrea's, I would say, biggest strengths and sometimes his biggest weakness is that he has...
No. Sorry. Ravi, this cannot be real.
Is he...
Wrong race, you're not a Zerg player.
Is he gonna take a third before Cybercore?
Okay, that is a meme,
That's a proper meme, proper meme. All right. Astrea lives up to the hype on this. Okay, let me ask you, Kev. In what world does the Overlord actually go scout that?
I probably think in this one, because Reynor is going to go ahead and take a look, and Reynor is a very good StarCraft 2 player, and he will realize that the timings are a little bit off, because even if it is Nexus first, that Cybercore is kind of supposed to be done by now. That Cybercore is incredibly late, so Reynor is going to fly the Overlord towards the right side. One of the minerals there did get touched upon briefly, but this is ridiculous. I have seen a lot of things in PvZ, and the Nexus first didn't really scare me, but the triple Nexus, that is ridiculous.
Okay, Roddy, extra question now. When that Nexus finishes up, if Astrea has not been spotted yet, how do you transfer the workers there?
I think he mines out the gold. Like, I think the idea here for Astrea is that we kind of get some sort of a full wall off in the natural, and you're definitely going to mine out the gold, right? Otherwise, this is just ridiculous. Then you can't even build workers from your main base or your natural and easily send it towards the third base. And you could obviously go for some sort of a recall, but this is all just very weird. Reynor is going to check for it right now because I think he knows that something does not quite add up here. I want to take a look at the camera to see if there's a reaction, but you know that Reynor is in the zone when he doesn't even react to this. He's like, oh yeah, very quick 3 bases. I guess that's somewhat normal. Like, this is not normal, guys.
Yeah. And I want to also stress that Reynor's third base is the very forward high-yield gas base as well. It is basically in the dead center of the map almost, and that means his attack path is going to be a lot shorter than potentially normal. If he is able to put on some kind of super early pressure over here, is there an opportunity for him to get something done at that third?
Yeah, the risky thing is, whenever you find yourself in a scenario that you just simply have not practiced, is that the first thing you always want to do is like, I should be aggressive. But there is a very good chance that Astrea is expecting Reynor to be aggressive, right? Because he is being way greedier than any pros player should. But reactive aggression is often something that players are looking out for when they are doing something crazy, so they expect to be attacked. So maybe the best thing that Reynor can do is actually not attack and just enjoy that rich Vespian guy is saturate his own 3 bases as quickly as possible and take it from there. Because we all know how Zerg works. If a Zerg player makes too many units of a relatively weak economy, it's incredibly hard for them to then transition into a normal game.
I love the big mind games. Already starting off with this best of 3 series here in this group. But we'll see where things actually end up shaking on out. We have Lair started up now finally here for Reynor. Everything is actually looking pretty normal. Not actually a crazy number of units, or besides the shield battery or anything, there's not a ton of defensive things that Astrea has been making so far. In fact, he hasn't really even made any of that kind of semblance of the wall that I think you were kind of hinting at the potential of having at the third. There it is, finally starting.
I do think we have to point out something there. I see Overlord speed being researched, and that obviously brings me back to the days of the German taxi. We cannot forget that Reynor has a rich Vespian geyser, so he could morph a couple of extra roaches into Ravagers. I have a feeling that it's going to be incredibly difficult for Astrea to deal with a silly amount of roaches, Ravagers, and Queens showing up. The German taxi is a build, and we call it the German taxi because Lambo's kind of the creator of it, where two Overlords morph into Dropperlords. They fly to the other side of the map. It kind of fell out of fashion because these days Queens need to be on creep to drop Transfuse. But there's obviously still a way around it, right? These Dropperlords can also start dropping creep, then the Queens can still drop a creep tumor, and this is exactly what Reynor is going to do. It's 56 drones, so he's incredibly committed, but look at the army supplies at this point. Reynor is going to have a lot of battle units, and I have no idea how Astrea is going to deal with it.
When is Astrea going to be able to catch wind of this? Astrea's looking to take a fourth base. This madman doesn't know when to stop. And finally, the drop overlords are about to be scouted at the front door of Astrea. The creep is already being dropped on out. Shield batteries being thrown down in desperation. Can he actually mount a defense against this?
But once Blink Stalkers are ready, then obviously there is a little bit of micro potential. Then you can get some cannons and batteries up. But the cybernetics core is indeed in the front, and you need a cybernetics core to build Stalkers. So at this point, the only thing that Astrea can build is one Immortal at a time and slow Zealots. And I don't think there is anything worse in this game than slow Zealots versus this many Roaches, Ravagers, and Queens.
Shield battery overcharge gets taken on out. The Corrosive Biles being extremely effective, even knocking out a lot of these Force Seals. The Queens also have used a lot of their transfuse energy, so not that many transfuses left over, but there are just still so many Zerg units left over in this natural of Astrea. The wall has been effectively completely broken. The Robo facility also gets depowered, and things are looking grim, but can Astrea somehow mount a defense? He still has kept his economy intact, but he just doesn't seem like he has enough producing anymore.
No, there is not that much firepower. There are no shield batteries to blink back to either. Maybe if that Robo can get repowered, he gets an Immortal out. There are a couple of slow Zealots in the mix right now that are soaking up a couple of shots of the Roaches and the Queens, but it does still feel that Reynor, with all the reinforcements that are coming in for the Zerg, should have more than enough here. The Queens obviously not that good once they get at the edge of creep, and I do love the way that Astrea has microing these Stalkers all the way to the back of his natural, to the back of the third base. It still feels there should be too much Zerg, but so far Astrea is honestly doing a great job.
This is definitely a game that I think a lot of other pros players you'd point to and say they've already lost at this point. Astrea hanging on at this point is already just a miracle, but it feels like the natural being broken is going to be a little bit too much for Astrea to deal with. I don't know if he can bounce back from that one.
Yeah, and these Ravagers really utilizing the range, obviously using that Corrosive Bow ability non-stop. Good job there by Astrea, warping in a couple of units, making sure that he can deal with these Zerglings, but there will be many more Zerglings trying to make their way into the main base. We've got a Dark Shrine on the way, but I have the feeling that by the time that Dark Shrine is going to finish up, Reynor has already found the amount of damage that he's looking for. Right now, they're even in workers, but more Zerg units are going to make it into the main base. It was a cool build by Astrea, but Reynor is showing us that some of these Zerg classics are still pretty damn effective in dealing with these weird builds.
Yeah, really nice move there from Reynor to basically say, I've segmented your units over at your third, so they can't really move to your main. So now Astrea is forced to recall over to his main base, but that means that his third base should theoretically be potentially under some fire. Now it seems like Reynor is just going to decide to back off. He loses some of the drop overlords on the retreat.
One thing I wonder about is, like, Reynor definitely saw the Dark Shrine, but did he see it, Fear Dragon? Like, he saw something being brought in, but I don't see any Spore Crawlers. I don't think I've seen a single Overseer so far. So if Astrea warps in a couple of Dark Templars and he spreads them immediately across all 3 or 4 bases, there is a good chance that he's going to find some damage as Reynor knocks down the rocks in the center of the map, and he's going to force these Stalks to blink back. Still no detection at all on the side of Reynor, so Reynor clearly is not aware of the fact that that was a Dark Shrine in the back of the main base of Astrea.
I think one really funny thing too about this situation is that Astrea almost has a bit of a reputation of staying in games maybe when he's fallen a little bit further behind than he could potentially come back from it's very possible Reynor looks at this game and isn't thinking, Astrea, why are you still in this? He may be thinking, Astrea's doing that Astrea thing. He's kind of staying in the game, see if he can make some magic happen where there is none. And is he going to be ready?
It's very important for Astrea to stay in the face of Reynor. Not because he can get anything done there, but as long as you're in his face with Blink Stalkers, Reynor is not necessarily thinking about Dark Templars. I do believe we just had our first Overseer finish up, but a single Overseer to deal with this many Dark Templars. I mean, Astrea is actually going to find a very decent amount of damage here. No spores in the main, no spores in the natural. This man is a warrior.
And I love it. The DTs actually land at each one of the mineral lines at roughly the same time, which makes it extra difficult. Spore Crawler is going to try and go up inside that main base, but the drones have to all-out retreat. The Overseer does manage to catch a couple of these DTs, so 1 and 2 of them are going to end up falling. 8 workers, not quite as much damage as you're looking for, but I mean, he has still evened up the worker count.
Yep, and it's still just Lairtech Zerg, right? So Astrea definitely finding some time for himself, still busy with these stalkers as well, displaying some of his multitasking abilities. The fact that Astrea has been able to hang in there for that long, well, when this rush started over Reynor, well, he had like 20 army supply, a couple of stalkers that didn't even have Blink yet. To make matters even worse, he lost his Cybercore at the beginning of the attack. The fact that we are here is impressive, but Astrea is definitely not out of trouble yet. He's still down a lot of army supply. He's going to try to buy some extra time to maybe get a couple of Disruptors out or even Colossus. But I have the feeling that Reynor is ready to pounce once more. This time around, we have Banelings in the mix too.
And it's going to be so tough because it's not even just that Astrea needs to defend. Astrea needs to defend and have enough to do some kind of massive counterattack because he is a 3-base Protoss versus a Zerg that is going up to his 5th base. And Reynor definitely has a lot of other things to fall back to. The Banelings come crashing on forward, though, and somehow Astrea is able to make it up to the choke point and take a slightly cost-efficient trade, but it doesn't matter. Reynor doesn't need cost efficiency right now. He just needs to dominate Astrea's 3rd location.
And he is. He got the Disruptor, he gets the Nexus, he's going to be able to get the Robo as well. And I do think that this will finally do it for this first game that started off in one of the most bizarre ways that I've seen any high-level CVP start off. Nexus first, into a gateway, into another Nexus. Astrea for a full second there went full Zerg. Unfortunately, did not quite work out as Reynor punished him with that good old German taxi build.
Yeah, really, really good response there from Reynor and well-executed attack. Almost a little unfortunate that Astrea dove so deep on that as there's the GG. I think he was, if you'll recall, he was trying to take a 4th base as the German taxi was coming his way. But wow, just really, really showed dominance there in the reaction from Reynor.
Yep, love it. The best thing that Reynor, I think, could have done against this build specifically, because there were a couple of extra gateways going up before Astrea had tech. Like, one of the main reasons, other than the fact that Queens can no longer transfuse out of creep, that this build fell out of fashion a little bit, is just that Protoss players got very good in getting up a whole bunch of Blink Stalkers very quickly, a lot of static defenses, and sometimes even Immortals in great spots that are, if they are able to fire at Roaches specifically, Immortals are godlike. But Reynor, he knew, because he's like, okay, you're kind of worried probably that I'm going to do some sort of a Link flood or maybe a silly Link Bane all in. So it's very likely that you're going to drop extra gateways before you drop your tech. And if the tech is late, it is so difficult to deal with that many Roaches and Ravages.
It is so difficult in those kind of situations. So I love the kind of reaction there from Reynor. You were talking also in the beginning of that game how it is tough to sometimes to make the call because there's a lot of those mind games. Your opponent's doing something really greedy, but they're doing something greedy and they probably have practiced and are expecting you to attack. So what do you do? And Reynor, he identified and still managed to come up with a solution that worked perfectly.
Yep, he's like, I'm not going to be aggressive immediately. I'm going to be aggressive with something that's a bit more difficult to defend than just a good old Link flood or the Link Bane aggression that you probably expect me to do, because that should work and that would work if Astrea would do like one game into Twilight, right? That's when it would work. But Astrea was kind of hoping, I think, even that Reynor would go for some sort of a Link flood, and that's where these extra gateways and that shield battery would come in. I think Reynor made a perfect strategy choice. There was maybe a world where these DTs could have done even a bit more than they ended up doing, because Astrea waited quite some time to reveal them, but I think that's also because he wanted to reveal all 3 at once. Overall, I think a pretty damn fun first game.
Absolutely. This series is living up to exactly what I was hoping it would be, as we are going to be moving into game number 2 on Babylon. Starting up here in the top left-hand side of the map, we have our red Zerg player, the Italian stallion from Kaizi Gaming. He is Reynor.
And in the bottom right side of Babylon here at the rematch of the Home Story Cup 22 Grand Finals, we're looking at the main base of the man hailing from San Diego, California. He's 0-3 today. He really needs to start picking up at least a map win. Representing all flags, this is Astrea.
And that is going to be a 0-3 in map score. Even picking up a single map does make a big difference in these groups. Remember, guys, that it is not just about series score to advance out of the groups. Every map win we've seen time and time again settles the difference in who advances and who doesn't.
Each and every single year, we've seen some top players even being eliminated in the past because they were a map win short. So and there's probably not too many people in this group that are even going to get a map win against Reynor. So Astrea can just tie things up here. I think he will already be buzzing, and he's still able to turn this around. We cannot count Astrea out. I was kind of frowning a little bit in that preview screen when you were doing your speech, and I saw you look at me. I was frowning at the stats of Astrea. I feel like they did him dirty, man.
Okay. So there are a few little addendums I'm going to actually put out on all those stats that I've learned. So first of all is that in the, the foresight that there might be a little bit of trolling from players on some of the numbers and everything, I believe that like a few of the extreme cases, if it was like a 0 was given across the board for a player or something, like they threw out some of those numbers. So the extreme ends. That being said, Astrea said that I think he said he gave every single player a 10 except for himself, Zaun, and Cyril.
Okay. So maybe he didn't take it all that serious.
I think he was trying to lower his score. Like, I think there was a little bit of memeing and stuff going on, but I still agree. I think his stats are a little bit lower, especially versatility. I think the versatility being as low as it is for Astrea is surprising to me.
Offense as well, man. I think he's a great offensive Protoss. Like, you give that man 3-4 bases, he's all over the place. He's never really the Protoss that sticks with one big army. He loves run-bys, he loves multitasking. I think Astrea, like, I would have been okay with like an 80 overall, or maybe an 81, 82. I think in the low 70s, I feel like they did him a little dirty. But I digress. Let's go ahead and talk about this very quick robotics facility, because that is once more not all that standard. Astrea is doing a lot of openings today that I feel are not very standard.
I think that's kind of the heart of Astrea's style, is to do things that are pretty untypical or atypical and finding some kind of victories there. Oftentimes trying to play against particular Zerg styles or Terran styles or Protoss styles that are in the meta and kind of saying, you are probably going to do A, I'm going to do something that's B. B is not good in a general sense against any kind of build order, but it's very good against A specifically. So we're going to see how that's going to pan out as, I mean, this is going to, of course, be something that gets scouted relatively quickly, I imagine.
Probably a Speed Prism Disruptor, right? That's kind of like the only thing that truly makes a lot of sense in this matchup. I kind of thought he was going to do that against Gumio, but he had a super quick Forge, and he had a very... Wow, we have a second Robo being warped in as well. A second Robo before minute 4.
Is it Colossus then? Or do you think it's still just double Robo Disruptor production?
I'm confused, mate, but we're about to find out.
It's double Robo Immortals with Speed Prism. No.
There is our first Disruptor, but we don't have an upgrade yet coming out of the Robo Bay. And I do kind of feel that normally when we go for this kind of an opening, which once more is not super standard, it's not a go-to. Most of the time we talk about the Stargate or the Twilight. The Robo is different. But if we do see the Robo, I feel like we pretty much always see War Prism Speed.
It's actually looking really similar to a build he did, I want to say, over a year ago in Caster Civil War, where he was playing a PvZ. He basically went for lots of disruptors off a double Robo, and I believe he just was flooding out also Adepts or something to support them.
I don't know if you're familiar with the double Rainbow, but I see double War Prism over here, Ravi. This is wild, man. Double War Prism in a 5-minute game. And Reynor, I do think is actually a bit confused, because you said this is going to get scouted relatively easily. But unless we completely missed it, Reynor has not sent an Overlord at all into the main base, right? Did we miss it?
I didn't really catch one. So that is really an interesting decision. I mean, this is one of those maps where I believe the Overlord Peeper Cliff is a bit further away. So maybe he didn't want to sacrifice it and have to send it that far out. But War Prism gets out of the main main base without really being spotted. The second one, I mean.
Okay, this is a great build if we were playing Archon mode, okay? You get a Warp Prism with speed, I get a Warp Prism with speed, we're gonna be all over the place. This would be absolutely fantastic in Archon mode, but last time I checked, it is just Astrea sitting there, so it's going to be incredibly hard to get max value out of 2 Prisms at the same time and 4 Disruptors, but this really is one hell of a build. Reynor has made a couple of roaches that I don't think were all that useful at first. Reynor is gonna see the first Warp Prism with a couple of Disruptors. It's only 2 drones falling, so far that was obviously pretty good for Reynor, but we know that this is just the beginning. There's another Warp Prism out on the map with 2 more Disruptors.
Yeah, and they're going to be heading forward now. The kind of funny thing is that it is going to get spotted immediately by the creep, and it's going to be very obvious that there was no way the Warp Prism could have moved around that quickly. The next 2 shots go out. They managed to connect with 4 workers total. The other 2 Disruptors not finding opportunity to move back in, though.
Reynor is still making a decent amount of roaches, but at this point he is a 59 drone Zerg. Now 59 drones, 3 base against 46 probes, 2 base is obviously not bad, but this is not a dream Zerg economy, and it's inevitable that even a Zerg like Reynor is gonna take some damage from all these Disruptors. As Astrea is now sending a couple of units to the other side of the map, he queued up a few Immortals as well. Reynor now goes back into droning, but Astrea's all in. This is a 2 base all in at this point, and Reynor has been confused about units, drones. What on earth is this build? And I love it, Ravi.
It's so good. The full wall off back at home. No counterattack potential. These units are getting in close to the hatchery, but he decides to pull back. He realizes he's about to be flanked. He tries to flank the flank with his own Warp Prism Disruptor army. He's going to be able to find so many of these roaches. He
gets all of them pretty much.
Oh my god.
But now I do think it's important for Astrea to go pedal to the metal, right? Every second that goes by is going to be a great one for Reynor. We do have a couple of links, and Rico has been used.
Probably just a few stalkers.
Yeah,
right?
that is exactly what it is. A couple of stalkers. Astrea knows that the clock is ticking, and the longer this game goes on, the better it will be for Reynor. The more Ravages will be out, the more Queen energy there will be in all these Queens that are going to help out in the battle. Couple of links running into the main base is very frustrating to deal with, but it really is all about this one big attack.
And these Disruptors are going to be so key if they can land big hits against these Queens. The transfuse energy is not going to matter whatsoever. He's finding some decent connections. He's almost finding a big connection on those roaches, but there is the big one he was looking for. And it feels like Astrea is actually making a lot of good progress here.
Absolutely. Don't forget that Reynor is only a 3-base Zerg. One Disruptor does get picked up there. I believe that's been the second one so far, but look at that hatchery. It is a sneeze away from falling, and in the end that hatchery does fall. And now technically Astrea would be allowed to go home. He would be allowed to start building a Nexus himself, but obviously if he feels that his army is still bigger and better than the army of Reynor, why would you go home? Why would you just not continue pushing? Reynor sending more roaches out on the map, and that's actually for an all-out counterattack by the looks of it, because he's not using them to flank. The wall-off has been recreated. Astrea can warp in a couple of units at home. Astrea has an army supply advantage with 2 Immortals and 2 Disruptors in the mix against only Roaches and Ravagers.
And of course it's an army supply advantage with the fact that a bunch of the Roaches are on the other side of the map trying to do counter damage. So if Astrea can break into the natural, that will just be a good game for Reynor. But these Roaches on the other side of the map are doing quite a bit of damage to the economy of Astrea. They are putting a bit of a timer on him to get something done if he wants to continue. At a minimum, he has to prevent that third from going up. He's got to move around over to that third and, yeah, snipe that off at some point.
And he's already doing that, and there's nothing that Reynor can do about it, because this Protoss army is ridiculously big. I believe that was a straight-up kill, no cancel even. I didn't see a drone come out of that hatchery. So Reynor loses another 300 minerals, and this army, indeed, that was the second hatch going down. Here come the Novas one more time. The Ravages are trying to buy time, but Astrea with one hell of a build, something that I've truly never seen before. I do think he's gonna get his first win of the day. There he goes. Max Angel. What was that? I love it.
Oh my god. Astrea looked at his scorecard and said, look, I know I rated myself a little bit lower, but I should have higher multitasking. I should have higher offense. I should have higher mechanics. And I feel like he just made a good case for it. That was a wild build.
Double Robo at minute 4. 4 Disruptors, 2 Warp Prisms, Warp Prism speed, queue up 2 Immortals, run Stalkers to the other side of the map, and a 2-base all-in. And you know what was funny? Because the first time that Reynor sent a couple of roaches towards the top right side, Astrea was chasing it with his entire army and that flanking Prism. And I was like, I actually feel like this is not the right call, because now Reynor's buying time. He's going to get more units out. He's going to be more well prepared for your attack. But obviously Astrea was able to land 2 very good Novas, and he got, I think, 8 out of 10 roaches or something that were running towards the top right side. So that was a perfect call by Astrea. And then he obviously realized, okay, that was great, but I still need to do a whole lot more, and he immediately went back to that great spot at the top of the ramp, at the top of the 3rd base of Reynor. That was just a 10 out of 10 build, man.
Yeah, I think the execution is what you're really highlighting there, about all these little decisions you have to make, because it's one thing to just really focus in on, big disruptor hits. Yeah, big disruptor hits are going to win the game, but it's a lot of the positioning that he was doing, a lot of the movement of his army and everything to make the most of those units. You were even talking about how you were keeping count of how many disruptors are there left, because there are no reinforcements moving across the map. Astrea is fully walled in. He can't do anything outside of warp in additional stalkers. So if he loses those disruptors, the entire push, the entire game is over at that point.
Yep, because the disruptors are the one unit that can really force these roaches and the ravages back, and then he can make up some ground. And the stalkers and the immortals are able to get in a little bit deeper and get on top of hatcheries, on top of queens. That was very fun. Obviously, it was a little bit annoying for Reynor that at first he didn't really know what was on about. So he made a couple of roaches too early, which obviously clearly hindered his own economy. But it seems that the players are going to need a couple of minutes before we hop into Game 3. So I believe we've got an awesome video prepared for you guys. And after that, we'll be back with Game 3 between Astrea and Reynor.
On a technical level, having played 20,000 games, well, probably more actually, in my career, I don't know how many games I played. Point is, I have some experience now. I think Zerg Rush is not the best, but maybe I'm a bit biased, you know?
I mean, it's simply not. The Zerg Rush is not the best tactic ever invented, actually. Zerg doesn't really have that many attacks that are good right now, so that's maybe an old thing.
Well, I mean, anything that Zurich does is like pretty good, so don't think there's any negatives.
It's not. I don't know. I mean, Zerg Rush is not particularly good, because if you play Zerg, why wouldn't you just play late game? I don't know. I don't know why you would rush, because it's just not as good as the all-ins from other races.
The Zerg Rush is probably one of the first cheeses ever invented, all the way back in Wings of Liberty, and it's still viable now, so it has longevity, and you could do it at any league and it'll be good.
동의하는 것 같아요. 이게 선수에 따라서 그 러쉬의 강도가 진짜 천차만별이라서 잘하면 진짜 너무 세고 못하면 진짜 형편없는 그 정도라서, 그러니까 선수 파일럿의 기량의 순수히 달려 있는 것 같아서 세다면 진짜 세다고 할 수 있을 것 같아요.
我为什么就是比较同意虫族这个战术，是因为虫族在打你 rush 的同时，他首先有可能一波把你打死，但是他在打不死你的前提下，他还可以补大量的农民去弥补他的经济上的缺陷。
Why is it the best tactic ever created? Because then you could type Zerg Rush on Google, and then you could like click on the little thingy, the game. You know it?
저그 러쉬도 그 플레이하는 사람 나름이라 가지고 잘하는 사람이 러쉬 오면 당연히 센데 저그 자체가 세진 않아 가지고 제 생각에 그렇게 무섭진 않아요.
The Zerg Rush? I mean, it's just in the spirit of the race, right? There's many units and quickly you go. It's just good, right?
Fun video there, although I do really enjoy Astrea showing his age, where he's like, the Zerg Rush, you know, I feel like it's the first cheese that was ever invented way back in StarCraft, Wings of Liberty. I'm like, oh, Max,
There was another game.
There was another game before this. I don't know if you ever looked at the title. It's StarCraft 2.
Yeah, that was cute. I feel like a lot of them took it a little too serious. Besides
Neep.
well,
Oh, yeah.
No, Neep took it very serious.
Yeah, that's. No, I thought you were. I thought you were being sarcastic.
I love the way that Gabe went about it. I mean, everything that Gabe says
Yeah.
makes me chuckle. All right, we are back in this pretty fun and obviously important best of 3 here of Group B at the Intel Extreme Masters 2023. In the top left side, we're looking at the main base of the man who has just dropped his first map of the tournament. But will he still win the best of 3? KaiZ Gaming's Reynor.
And down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, busting out meme after meme after meme. He is representing Alpha X, the Blue Protoss player, Astrea.
Looking back at the game, I do think that Reynor will be kicking himself a little bit for not going for the Overlord Scout. I feel like this is one of the very few moments where he was probably just expecting a Twilight or expecting a Stargate, and he's like, I don't really need to send in that Overlord. And the one time you don't, you obviously go up against a very quick Robo, a Robo Bay, and on top of that, a second Robo. Now, I know that Reynor has done his homework and he has prepared for a lot of different builds to be thrown at him in this event, and obviously in all 3 matchups, but I highly doubt that in any of the practice games of the last few weeks that he has played, that he went up against that build specifically.
And not only that, Kev, but I was thinking about, should I ask if you had scouted that, how would you react differently and everything? Because I feel like it's not even worth asking at this point or talking about too much, because how likely is it that Astrea does that again in game number 3? It's a one-off thing.
Not very likely, and to explain it to the people at home, like, why? It was such a good build and it worked in an excellent manner. Why wouldn't you do it again? It's just that the one thing that made the build fantastic, I think, is that Reynor made a lot of roaches pretty early on of a relatively weak economy. He started making roaches of like 40-something drones. Obviously, if Reynor knows that he has to worry about not 1 but 2 Warp Prisms and just a couple of Disruptors, then he's just going to crank out as many drones as possible. He'll run around with a couple of links, but that's about it. It's the investment in the roaches early on that slowed Reynor down, and it made Astrea's follow-up attack a lot more powerful, because yes, he had a couple of units, but he didn't have an overwhelming amount of units. And if Reynor knows he goes up against something like that specifically, he's going to play a much more macro-oriented game, and he's going to have economy almost twice as big.
And we are going to be seeing a change-up yet again here from Astrea, throwing down that Twilight Council. So game number 1, Nexus, and I think 3rd before Cybercore. Game number 2, double Robo Disruptor. Game number 3, let's go into the Twilight and see what kind of memes it can unlock there.
Yep, obviously Resonating Glaive adapts is still very good, and the beauty of the glaives is just that there are so many different ways to play it. There are so many different level of commitments. We're all pretty familiar with the 4-gate, with the Robo as well. Then you can have a Warp Prism sneak into the main base. The initial adapts can shade towards that Warp Prism. That's a very strong one. But after that, you can go up to 3 bases quickly if you want. Sometimes we'll even see a double Stargate follow-up. Hero has done it a couple of times, and obviously in the old days it was very popular. But there is also a good chance that you just stay on 2 bases and you don't go 4 gates, but you go 6 gates or 7 gates or even 8 gates. So it's obviously still very tricky as a top-tier Zerg player like Reynor to go up against this, because there is not a one standard go-to follow-up, go-to defense, because a lot of the different Protoss follow-ups require very different responses from the Zerg side.
Absolutely. Now, taking a look, we do have 4 gateways, I believe, that we're going to be going up to for the count. Resonating Glaives just gets started, and it starts getting chrono boosted out. I don't believe we had any early Stalkers or anything made after those Adepts, so I think the Overlord, if he wanted to move in, would be able to get a pretty decent scout there. There's the Stalker actually in the natural, but not going to probably be able to deny the main base scout.
Nope, that Stalker doesn't have crazy DPS. If only it could stim, man. Imagine how many shots it would be able to get off.
Stim, it only takes shields and we just regenerate them.
Oh, yes. If I was a game designer, right?
Now speaking your language. Yep. With a scout on something like this, what are usually going to be the kind of expectations that someone like Reynor would have about how committed this attack is?
Well, I think he will obviously be aware of the fact that it's very important to still have a little bit of map presence on the other side of the map. Is there a Nexus going down? The moment there is a Nexus going down, he knows he can go back into droning. As long as he doesn't see a Nexus, he knows he needs to take this as serious as possible. If the Adepts are committed, obviously you just fight it and you try to clean it up in the cleanest possible manner. If they are kind of just dancing on the edge of creep, after give or take 30 seconds, you're like, I'm going to drop a couple of Spore Crawlers, because that could be a Dark Shrine as a follow-up as well. So it just truly depends on what Reynor sees and how committed Astrea is playing with this. I gotta say, that is a lot of adepts, man. For minute 5, Reynor has a lot of roaches on the way, but the roaches are not quite out yet. Is the runner-up of IEM Katowice 2022 in some trouble here, Ravi?
Oh, one of the queens already got Focus Fire down. Another queen getting a bit lower on hit points. Zergling's not going to fare that well against Resident Enclaved Adepts, and they do manage to shade on out, connecting with some of the reinforcements that just got warped in, but the roaches are here. Drones have not really fallen, but keep in mind that the worker counts are even right now. Astrea still needs to get something done, but this is the money shot there.
Yep, those drones are being transferred back into the natural, but 7 of them go down very quickly. Astrea does a recall. I kind of wonder what that Prism was up to. Is that Prism just kind of chilling at the... Oh, that Prism took a lot of damage from Queens by the looks of it. Okay, and we did have a Spore Crawler finish up as well. Did Reynor already confirm that there is a third Nexus? I think those are the first. This is actually the first time that Reynor is going to see it. I do feel that you can always leave 1 or 2 links behind, and that would have maybe made it a bit easier for Reynor to figure out when that Nexus went down. Overall, I think this went pretty decent for Astrea, but it could have gone a whole lot better. And I actually think that he could have maybe cancelled that Shade when he was in the main base, because that looked like a very good fight. And if he didn't want to cancel it, I would have still left 2 Adepts behind to just one-shot 4 or 5 additional drones.
Yeah, I actually kind of like what we're seeing right now. You can see how effective even just 2 Adepts, despite the army being there, can just very efficiently and quickly pick off workers. And it looks like he's going to try and continue some of that harassment with the Warp Prism, moving around with some of those Adepts inside of it. But back at home, he is just getting up his own defenses, ensuring that everything looks okay. Here come the Adepts, and oh, that Prism has to be so careful because it doesn't have a lot of hit points to play around with.
Nope, took a couple of hits there from the Spore Crawler, and the Queen is like suddenly looking at Prism like, that's tempting. Maybe I can get a couple of hits off as well. That is not going to work. Astrea's follow-up is the Disruptor that the Robobay just finished up. Reynor trying to spread some creep, Astrea preventing it. Not want to give that extra bit of vision to the corner of the main base there. But Astrea's army is pretty big and powerful at this point. Reynor has been cranking out a lot of drones, but he needs to go back into units right here, right now. But he makes more drones, Fear Dragon. I actually think that Reynor could be in a bit of trouble here.
I think he's in a lot of trouble right now, and we're going to see the Overlord spotting out those 2 Immortals, spotting out how many of these Adepts have been reinforced with. And these Shades are going to be a little bit scary just in terms of the fact that, yeah, a few of those Adepts could potentially threaten to finish. It doesn't need to be all of them, because even just that, it's still going to be able to force an entire mineral line off of mining right now at a critical moment when Astrea is ready to go for a big attack potentially.
Yep, but Astrea is still building a lot of probes as well, and that's why he's not truly committing with his entire army. I think he could have maybe pushed the creep back even a bit further, because Reynor clearly sent over a lot of units to deal with the sets of 2 and 3 Adepts there. But in the end, Astrea did clean up a bit of creep in the center of the map, and he's working on Blink at this point. He's working on +1. And when it comes to the economy, 8 minutes into a game, a Protoss basically being dead even in workers, every Protoss player will look at that and be like, well, how much army supply am I down then? And if the answer is 7 or 4, they're going to be like, I'll take it. I'll take it any day of the week. I don't care what the composition is.
Yeah, I am actually really curious, when you are in this position as a Protoss player, how are you thinking about your army composition and how those Resident Enclaved Adepts really transition into that later game composition that you're trying to go for?
Yeah, they're not fantastic, but they're also not useless, right? Because they're still pretty good against Lings, and Lings are the scariest unit for the Immortals to deal with, and for the Disruptors as well, because it's super frustrating as a Protoss if your Disruptors just get swarmed by Zerglings, and you need to use the shots defensively, so you obviously don't want to start a game-ending fight with 20+ Adepts. That is not ideal, but as long as Reynor is nowhere near maxing out, still having a bunch of Adepts is not bad, but you can also slowly but steady be willing to trade them out. Just kind of 2 at a time, right? Try to find a few more drones here and there.
Yeah, got a little bit scary there as a lot of those Adepts almost finish a Shade, Nexus and Banelings, but he cancels that Shade. Is just continuing to send in 2 Adepts at a time. I love that Astrea has been so consistently, every minute, he's had at least 2 Adepts going into a mineral line.
And on top of that, he's still active with the War Prism on the left side, giving Reynor one more thing to worry about. Astrea is playing one hell of a series here. Game 3 has been excellent from the very beginning till we are here. That doesn't mean that he's going to win it, but at this point, it's honestly starting to look very good for him. Reynor is working on +2 melee though, and he does have Baneling speed, and we know that if Baneling speed connects with the Protoss army, Banelings can always be pretty good, even against Stalkers, even against Immortals. If they can get the sweet connections, magic is still possible for Reynor, but this is not a spot that I think Reynor was expecting himself to be in, with 174 supply against 160, not having an infestation pit, not having a hive on the way, not even truly having 5 bases yet.
It's hard to come into a series with a game plan when you just really don't know where this other man can go, what kind of things he's going to be doing to you. Disruptor shot, ooh, beautifully done actually over there. He still ends up losing the Disruptor, but picks off a lot of Lings because the Disruptor does not damage itself.
Yeah, but that was a great trade by Reynor, right? It's just a couple of Zerglings for one of these big, powerful key robo units. As Reynor has split up a couple of units, and he's going to try to run into the Natural. At the same time, he's going to try to make some magic happen at the 5th base of Astrea, but Astrea's got cannons here. The Banelings are connecting, but these Banelings did not have +2 yet. Look at that one hero Zergling that was left behind, getting a couple of hits up. More Banelings rolling into the 3rd, and Reynor creating chaos here. He says, all right, now it's my time to find some damage. But Astrea still had that Prism, had a couple of Zealots in the top left side, but I think it's safe to say that that was an excellent attack by Reynor.
Absolutely, and we've been talking up about how much Astrea has been able to do with his aggression and everything, but it's all been with little caveats there of, but Reynor is defending really well, but Reynor's only losing 1 or 2 drones. When Reynor finally puts on his first bit of aggression in this game, you see how devastating some of that damage has been able to be.
And now +2 melee finished up, so from here on out the Banelings are actually going to one-shot the workers, a very important upgrade for Reynor. That was really cool, by the way, because a lot of probes survive with 5 HP, but somehow there was one hero Zergling in the back of this base getting like 1 hit off on 5 probes. So obviously going on a bit of a killing spree there. Reynor is now close to maxing out, and he's got Hive on the way. He's going to try to get the Observer, but Astrea will not fall for that. Reynor found a lot of damage there, but there is still a pretty terrifying Protoss army to worry about. And without any Hive tech units, Reynor knows that this game is far from done.
Oh, gotta be very careful. The Disruptor's actually finding quite a few of those Banelings on one front, but there are still so many left over. They're running mostly around the Archon zone. The Archons actually managed to dispense with those Banelings pretty gosh darn quickly. Zealot counterattack on the other side of the map is able to once again disrupt the mining and a solid defense.
As good as that previous attack was for Reynor, this one was honestly a bit of a disaster. We had a battery overcharge for the entirety of the fight. The battery even survived. The Archons were soaking up a lot of Banelings, and we have Zealots finding a little bit of damage as well. But Hive is done, and I do think it's important for Astrea to now capitalize on the fact that he just had a phenomenal trade. There are more Banelings heading his way, and these Banelings will one-shot all of these probes. That's painful, but it's about the army. It's 82 army supply against 96. Astrea wants to make sure that he doesn't lose more probes, but no, that's the wrong angle for the probes. 28 workers have gone down, but more importantly for Reynor than killing these 28 workers is not killing the Cybernetic score, but that's pretty nice too, is the fact that Astrea turned around and went home, and that gives Reynor time to enjoy that 86 drone economy and rebuild a lot of these expensive units he lost in that previous attack.
And it's exactly to that point that Astrea had kept alive so many power units, so many of those Archons, so many of these Disruptors, that if they had been able to give it the opportunity to immediately dart across the map, to immediately get some big damage done, that could have been potentially game-ending. So a critical maneuver there from Reynor. The offense becomes a defense, and now Astrea is finally hitting, but at this point, so many of those Banelings have finished up. 38 or so extra Banelings, 39 Banelings have now completed, and some of them actually still looking to potentially go for a counterattack.
Yep, and if you're maxed out on this composition that Reynor is currently working with, you want to keep on trading, you want to keep on finding damage. You just want to make sure that you don't find yourself in that spot where you lose everything, and then the Protoss army can counterattack, as that's a juicy Nova. A couple of Ravages go down. Seems like most of those Banelings didn't get a whole lot done. Astrea still has an army that is completely capable of winning this game. 106 and +3 attack is about to finish up for all these Archons. This is a nail biter, because this game is so so damn close. If it goes on for another 5 minutes, there's a very good chance that Reynor is totally fine. But 5 minutes is a lifetime in a game of StarCraft 2 like this. I think Astrea can still do it.
I absolutely think so as well. And I mean, a lot of those banelings actually just went down because they were trying to do that counterattack. They ran straight into the Archons, the last unit that they really want to run into, and pretty much all of them ended up dying there. We're going to see another big attack coming into this location. The banelings connecting with some of the probes. They're looking for some final connections. They're not quite going to be able to find too many more, but still, 8 workers disrupting things, actually literally killing a disruptor as well, and forcing Astrea all the way this far back, and most of his disruptors also getting pulled back as well.
Yep.
Reynor's just buying himself time, like you were saying.
Exactly. +3 melee is on the way. I think Adrenal Gland's already finished up. I wouldn't hate to see a Viper or two from Reynor. I do really think it's time to get 1 or 2 Vipers, because if he's able to get rid of these disruptors, then he's totally fine. Oh, probe stacking up. Banelings turn around. 19 additional workers go down. How many probes have gone down in this game? We're looking at 70 or something. 81 workers have gone down in this 15-minute game. But this right here is still a terrifying army, because Reynor does not have any hive units other than Adrenal Gland Zerglings. And no matter how feisty and great these Zerglings are, that's too many Archons for Zerglings to fight.
Yeah, those Archons are going to be devastating. Even the Zealots are actually going to be pretty annoying for them to deal with. Disruptor are going to be able to try and get a little bit extra damage on that picture, but here we go. Astrea pushing forward with all of these Archons. The Archon's going to have a hard time with this kind of Roach Ravager army, though.
Yep, that's why the Disruptors are so important, right? But the Disruptor count is not crazy high. We're looking at 2 Disruptors at a time. Astrea really needs these shots to push away that Roach Ravager army. Reynor loses one of the 5 bases that he was working with, one of the 4 bases that he was working with, because that base in the center of the map, he hasn't really used at all. He's going to try, but if we get 1 or 2 additional Disruptors, there's a Warp Prism in the mix as well. I don't know if Reynor can truly defend this base, but he's absolutely going to try. But the looks of it, more High Templars being warped in as Reynor is morphing 49 Banelings further, and this game is great.
This is absolutely absurd. We're going to see again, Astrea tries to move forward, but I think that might be the last Disruptor shot for at least a little bit longer. More of these Archons. There's so many Archons. This is such a weird angle to come in from. The Banelings are coming around. It looks like for a counterattack, but it might even just be for a flank. I'm not sure which one he's trying to commit to.
Reynor, you've killed all the probes there. There are no more probes to kill. And it seems that he was aware of it. The Archons do find it, and these Archons with +3, all they need is 1 or 2 hits on these Banelings. And Reynor is obviously losing a couple of expensive units. Warp Prism in a bit of trouble, and these Archons that were morphing here are also in trouble. Reynor gets all 3 of them. Astrea does blink forward. Obviously with the Blink Stalkers, he's got some micro potential. We need to address the Great Spire that's on the way. Broodlords would be absolutely fantastic as more probes go down. Reynor has killed over 100 probes, but there is still this army to take care of in the first place. But Astrea needs to realize it's kind of go time. He needs to go for it. Whether it's pretty or not, you cannot let a game drag out if you have 30 workers.
Greater Spire is a straight-up kill move for the army composition that Astrea has for himself. And on 32 workers, there is no transition. There is no slap down 3 or 5 Stargates, start pumping out Void Rays or something.
No.
This is actually a straight-up kill move for Reynor if he can get to that stage.
Reynor just got one of the Disruptors there with his Ravagers. That is absolutely fantastic, but one Nova does connect with 1 or 2 Ravagers. Reynor loses another hatchery, but he's got some money. He's got a couple of Broodlords on the way. He's going to cancel one of the morphing Broodlords there in a vulnerable spot, and he's got 4 Broodlords morphing in his main base. How high is the Stalker count? Because Archons are not great, but Stalkers with +3, they could absolutely blink forward and snipe those Broodlords.
They absolutely could. There's not actually that much anti-air here either. I wonder if you can even start dropping with the Warp Prism Archons on the Broodlords to try and just close the gap.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it, Ravi, because how many Queens are left? I see 1 Queen on the production tab. We only have 2 Queens remaining indeed. But now Astrea is aware of the fact that there are a couple of Broodlords out. And the Broodlords, I heard, they're very quick right now.
They are so quick, and they're actually able to do some great kiting as well. Disruptor, not too bad over there, but this is getting so awkward.
Vin Diesel, eat your heart out. The boys are coming.
Yeah. This is becoming such a hectic game right now. The Warp Prism is keeping an eye out like an observer on the opponent's army. The Zerg army is going to have to deal with these Disruptors, though. Another 2 Disruptors have joined the fray. The Archons, remember, they can deal with the Broodlings very, very quickly, but there is still a bit of additional damage that happens every single time.
Novas, will they go off. Oh no, the disruptors go down. The Novas don't quite connect, and that was obviously very painful. And I think now Astrea is going to be forced to take this fight off his ramp. That was a good Nova. The Stalker count isn't high enough. He blinks forward. He gets one of the Brood Lords, but that is not enough. GG. Reynor wins an absolutely fantastic Game 3 versus Astrea and improves to a 2-0 record here in